So maybe we can start with, David, like just overall overview of Hong Kong International School, kind of like your core values, and maybe in the context of your technology outlook and how you thought about distance learning before this whole thing happened, and just kind of like an overview of the school would be good.
Sure. So we, as a school system, reception, which is like kindergarten, pre-kindergarten through grade 12, we have about 3,000 students, and the high school is about 800, with approximately 200 students per grade level. We're a well-resourced international school. We're one-to-one MacBooks, and in fact, many of our students and faculty are 2-to-1. So
Okay.
with also iPads, and we run a number of pilots with groups. Hamlet works with a number of kids that are and teachers that are doing pilots with different kind of iPad technologies as well. We use Schoology as an LMS system and have been using it robustly for a number of years, and so that's always been a part of our system, which I would say in our current environment has been really helpful. And so having a strong LMS, regardless of what it is, where all the information is housed, is really important. We have about 85 teachers at our school. Our class sizes sit around 18 to 20 for the most part.
Very good.
Yeah. And our school's been here for just over 50 years, and originally founded by a group of missionaries from the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod, and so that's where we're based in the Christian faith.
Gotcha. Have you guys done remote, have remote students or ever experienced having remote students in the past?
Well, we were actually forced into it this fall
Okay.
with protests that were happening in Hong Kong. So the government shut us down. How many days did they shut us down? You remember?
It was a week, I think.
5 days, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it came out of nowhere. So one of the things that happens here in Hong Kong is that the government won't give you any heads up, and so all of a sudden, you'll read it in the newspaper that the school's canceled tomorrow, and so then you're just kind of, you have to have things ready to go. So this fall, we needed to shift into online learning because we didn't know how long they were going to keep us closed, and we kind of let teachers do what they wanted to do with it, and within a couple days realized that we needed to keep everybody on our bell schedule to keep everybody and move towards a synchronous learning system. And then after that, our associate principal, Brent Braco, and Hamlet and a group of teachers have been brainstorming on, okay, if we're ever in this situation again, how should we really look at this? And then in late January, with the coronavirus, all of a sudden I get a news article saying that we're closed for 2 weeks, and we had a couple days to lift into virtual learning, and so our team sat down and just kind of made some big decisions on how we were going to run it, and we've decided to run a synchronous system on our bell schedule, taking attendance in Hong Kong time, and so our system actually looks very similar to if kids were on campus. And then working with Hamlet was building a number of different tutorials for students and for teachers, and doing lots of training to upskill everybody. We landed on everybody was going to use Zoom, and then we've been working within Zoom in the pro licenses now for a number of weeks.
Okay. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, actually, I'll leave it till the end in terms of like what ended up being in the tutorials. I'm curious on that, but we'll talk about it later. I'll make a note. What was the effect? So of course it's clear once the school is announced to be closed, and it's closed for students. Obviously teachers can still be on campus. What's the effect, or what did you have to deal besides sort of realizing that you have to teach kids remotely, like in terms of parent interaction and kids interaction? Like what did you have to do? How did you end up communicating with them if they're all at home? And how did you establish the communication channels?
Yeah, so we again, Schoology is our main go-to, and so we communicate regularly through there. I would say if you can ever over communicate, but I write a lot these days,
Mhm.
and I spend a lot of time answering questions and having Zoom sessions with parents. This Friday we have 4 hours of just open Zoom that parents can drop in and touch base with any admin. But I'll tell you, with teachers, it was shifting from how they normally do business, in the classroom, to all of a sudden everything is online, and then having to shift the way that they were thinking about instruction.
Mhm.
And the interactions are different, the activities are different, and so our teachers have been working day and night to upskill and also to create new learning systems within.
And
And
also, it's not just synchronized teaching, like because some like we need to prepare something for them to do asynchronously. So it's really like way more than just doing like teaching in the classroom sometimes.
Our
yeah,
teacher, go ahead, David.
uh, yeah, we've told all of our community that for live lessons, school as usual, it's in Hong Kong time, but we have about 40% of our community that is all over the world right now. So we're recording every session, and then students are able to do self-paced learning if they're in different time zones and don't want to be up at 2 a.m. for school.
Mhm. In terms of teachers' adaptation, are they working on redoing their lesson plans and kind of rethinking the structure of how to deliver the lesson plans? And is
100%.
there like so there's these tutorials that you guys prepared. Is there a third party toolbox or book or something that you guys found that was particularly useful in shifting?
Well, one of the things was that we jumped in the pool with this really early compared to other schools.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had that trial in the fall, we seriously just flipped a switch. We had one day of professional development, and then we were going. And so we found our middle school did a nice job of building a template for lesson planning that they were using. So we adopted that and have shared that. And teachers, they don't have to use that template, but they have to have a template. And we just made some big parameters around that every Zoom session is going to be recorded,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be posted in this place. And so just making every page look very similar. Hamlet's been working with teachers to help make sure they organize their pages. Our associate principal has gone through tons of pages, all the teachers' pages, to ensure that they're all looking the same.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is some of the most important parts. I mean, when you talk about the instruction, that kids are tracking that pretty easily. But if they have to navigate different pages for 8 different teachers, that's really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
the more systems we have in place for that, the better. As far as resources, early on, I started pulling in some other principals that were in similar circumstances.
In
And
Hong Kong or outside of Hong Kong?
all over.
All
Yeah,
over.
people that I've known over the years, and so we've done a couple of Zoom sessions and just shared the different communications and tools and things that we're doing.
Okay.
I'll describe the process as like we got thrown into the water and we try to stay afloat in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So the critical part is to balance like what we are doing like before we have this virtual classroom, so that people can do it with not minimal, like while they're handling all those challenges, they don't really need to worry about redesigning the entire class in the beginning. But once they get used to that, like then we need to think of how we swim better,
Mm-hmm.
so that
Mm-hmm.
people start to redesign the course. And this is we need to think about the context of the school and the level of teachers literacy or capacity in using tech, and also the way they teach. I would say that part is very we have to look at what the school has been doing and the school culture in order to make it smooth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is something that we learn in this process as well.
Yeah.
How about parents, like communication with parents or parents' needs or demands? Anything unusual there, or is it more of a?
Yeah, there was a lot of fear, and that in the beginning there was a lot of, well, okay, so we've been out of school for 3 weeks, so how are we going to make up the 3 weeks? And what we've been able to share is that since we've been doing synchronized learning, we are continuing school every day. It looks different, it feels different, but we are still delivering instruction. We are still doing summative assessments. We're still doing formative assessments, and so there's no need to extend anything, because you would extend it for what? Because we're getting through our curriculum and continue to keep up with things. And so in the beginning, there was a lot of fear around that. I had to do a lot of communication around that piece. And then probably the other thing that's challenging here is that we're one of the few American curriculums in Hong Kong. There's a lot of UK, IB, and then Hong Kong local curriculums, and they have end of year testings and things like that. And so the government has made exceptions for some of those schools because kids have to do their end of year exams. And so our community had a hard time understanding, well, how come those schools are back in session and how come you aren't? And we've been able to really hold the line of, we are in session. Kids are learning every day. We have, because we take attendance, we have over a 90% attendance rate every day. And at times we've had better attendance now than at some of the weeks during the year. So
all the activity, and trips.
yeah, because a lot of our kids, they travel a lot. And so, for like games, for us, for our kids, when they go to play a tournament, they play in Japan or China or
right.
They travel. And so all of those travel opportunities, although sad, are gone. And so our teachers have all of their kids every single day. And I think probably some of the pieces that we're still trying to adjust is the idea of workload. And that was an early on thing too, is that, I would have parents email me saying, the workload is so much heavier. My kid's spending 8 hours a day on the computer. And I said, well, normally they would spend 6 at school. You don't see that, right? And so we've had to do a lot of mind shifting to understand that school takes time, no matter what you do.
Right. And, kind of like they were looking at it as like it's all homework, but it's actually 6 hours of it is not homework, it's actual school.
And the conversation with our teachers has been around, if you can put the homework embed it in the lesson so they don't have to have as much screen time, then try to make that happen.
And that's a shift for teachers as well. And I think we can also highlight the parent-teacher conference, because eventually we host a parent-teacher conference online and get parents to call in with Zoom with their kids. And I think that helps the parents to understand how it actually works. And we had lots of positive feedback.
And
you already have done parent-teacher conferences, right?
Yeah, and with our community, we had a mom and their child in the U.S. and dad here in Hong Kong, or somebody in Japan. We had one family where the kid was here, mom was in Japan, and dad was in the U.S. and all three of them were in the Zoom meeting together, having the conference. So
interesting.
So it was really good. And actually, in some ways, the scenario has opened up more access, because for families where their parents are working a lot, they typically have a hard time getting to conferences. And we usually host them later on at night to try to allow people to get here. But this was great, because the parents had said, I can easily pull out 30 minutes in my day if I don't have to travel to get there to the school,
Do you think, and I have a later on question about it, but do you think for this specifically parent-teacher conferences, after the crisis is over, do you think you'll adopt more ability to do these kind of remote, given that you're experiencing much better access to parents and much better engagement with parents?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that even some of the challenges that we've had, as far as I would like to have our students have more opportunity to do some distance learning. And it's been pushed up against at times, because people didn't know really what it could look like. And after doing this for so long, the idea that you can have a robust system that is virtual is going to open the doors for our kids to be able to do internships and to be out of the country, I think, in the future.
So I would say, would you say that prior to the protests in the fall of last year, you didn't do any kind of distance learning? And it sounds like you wanted to do it, but you were getting pushback from people, pushback from parents, kids, or teachers. Who was giving
It was more about the system in the school.
the system itself? Or,
Yeah, and that there was a wonder that would the curriculum be watered down. And in this
Mhm.
scenario, we have to ensure that it's not. It's critical. Our parents are paying a lot of money for their kid to go to school, at our school, and so we have to make sure that everything is at a level and really support them in different ways, and also be a little more flexible with some things. Again, with a number of our families overseas right now, we have to adjust some things that we typically in a regular school day we wouldn't.
Mhm.
And the only thing that we've been doing before those, like before we switch, or even before the what happened in fall, was it's called Global Online Academy. So it's something that many schools have joined, and students are taking courses, and there's a teacher and it's almost like an online course, but it's
Mhm.
always an optional thing that students can participate.
Yeah.
So, but it was like getting more traction, but it's a completely different game before
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. Did you have to adjust, given the online nature of it, in terms of how you, for example, measure student engagement, or how do you deal with student collaboration, right? I'm sure part of your, the lecture part of it is probably a little bit easier, and, content delivery is a little bit easier, but how do you manage collaborative sessions or project work or things like that?
Yeah, within Zoom, there's a number of different tools, and so like teachers can put kids into breakout rooms, and then the teacher can pop into the room. And so if there's a class of 20, they can put 10 breakout rooms together, and those kids are the only kids in that room talking.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really cool, to be able to do that, to be able to group kids virtually.
Mm-hmm.
And but I would say engagement is probably one of the biggest things. Engagement and summative, how to do summative assessments, are probably the two pieces that we continue to try to adjust and keep focused on, because again, you have a kid sitting at their computer for 6 hours a day. That's rough.
Yeah. It's probably the first time they're saying that, can I close the screen, and then can I
Right.
just move away?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One,
Although,
one kid said that I've ruined their love of video games.
yeah, no, I was about to say it. Like my kids, I have a 14 and a 16-year-old. The 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, on the weekend, I think they can put in 6 hours in front of a video game. But
Easily,
even
right?
that, well, not easily, but it's rough. Like,
Okay.
they on their own, they're gonna say like, "Man, I'm tired of being in front of the screen." Like I can imagine with educational content versus, highly stimulative game content, it's even tougher. What kind of things do you do? So if you're on your bell schedule, that means you have the same kind of breaks, lunch breaks, and in between class breaks. It kind of gives a little bit of a similar simulation of a normal day, where you would take breaks in between. Or
Yeah, that routine has been critical. And that's something definitely parents have appreciated also, because they want their kids on a routine. They want them to get out of bed, and I continue to write to our families of saying, make sure your kid gets up at the same time every day, take a shower, get dressed, eat breakfast like you would normally
Mhm.
do, so you think of it as going to school just in your home, right?
Mhm.
Um, I would say early on, there was kids, laying in their beds and that kind of stuff. And now we've worked with our faculty also to remind students that this is class, and
Mhm.
our kids are getting really good with it.
Mhm.
They are, so they're taking it seriously. And we've been on, again, this is a long time. This is our 5th week of it.
Wow.
So
So what is your long-term plan? So is this, I'm sure with each week you're improving and you're getting better and kind of the things, but is this something that you feel comfortable running till the end of term and completing? Or do you have kind of other bigger plans beyond that?
no, I think that right now, if we were forced to finish out the year virtually, I don't think that we would make adjustments to our schedule Probably a couple things that we would put in is probably a few days of no computer screen time, you know, of just saying, you know what, maybe assign a little bit of reading and let's just close the computers down for a day and get out. You know, one of the things our PE teachers have done a really great job.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the PE.
They've been building individual workout plans for kids every week. And actually a lot of the kids, because they live in, you know, apartment buildings or whatever, 2 or 3 or 4 of them will come together and do the workout together, and they film it and they send it back to their PE teacher. And that's
some parents join that as well, I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the parents are enjoying the workout plans as well.
Are a lot of parents staying at home at the same time? Do you know? Is everyone at home because of the?
Yeah, I would say a majority of our families, one parent works and the other one is home. And if kids that are in a 2-parent household that are working, for teenagers it's been okay. For younger kids it's been hard. Like my kids are 7 and 9, and you know, they're more, it's a blend of synchronous and asynchronous, but probably it's 80% asynchronous. And so you're working through kind of, you know, different packets and different worksheets and, you know, and some of that stuff. And so it's definitely more challenging. And if you have littler ones, you have to stay with them a lot more. The reports I'm getting from the high school parents is that because it's outlined so clearly, that the kids can navigate their learning and that they can handle it. And it's more about parents just checking in on them, you know? So one parent said that she just feels like she's a short order cook now, all day long.
What about, so any other things that you would implement if you had to finish this term this way? Or you're kind of comfortable with the structure, maybe a few adjustments, no screen time?
Yeah, but I think that we're still trying to shift in the way in which we give summative assessments.
Summative assessments.
Yeah, so looking at trying to see where we can do more performance-based, because when it's a paper pencil test, it's just hard to make sure that the integrity of the test is all right. You know, we're going to try some lockdown browsers, you know, and kind of see that. But again, that's not, you know, you don't want to always test that way. And so you do want, so I think for us, we're trying to upskill our knowledge in how to assess students differently. And I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges of anybody who's on virtual learning right now. Because at first, like when we were in the fall and we were closed for the week, it was, well, we'll just wait on all of our summatives till we get back.
Right.
And we made the decision right up front that you can't do that. And you have to give summatives because we don't know how long we're going to be out. And at that point, it was only 2 weeks. And now we're in week 5 and we have another 5 to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Not until mid-April.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Hamlet with the AP tests and kind of maybe doing some adjustments in terms of how you prep AP tests or AP students. Is your plan still to maybe bring some of them on campus to do more intense studying?
Yeah, but I would say it's not critical. I think it's more of what one parent explained to me is it just kind of a warm blanket for us as parents? And I said, yes, it is, because I would say out of all of the programs, the AP is so structured that it fits in this realm really nicely, you know, that, you know, you follow the plans of the AP, you know, all the way through it.
And your AP testing is also early May?
Yeah, mid-May.
And the reason why we got the Swivl is because we it's kind of high stake, right? It's a public exam that people are doing. So we want to make sure students who are not here in Hong Kong, they cannot come on campus they can still experience that. And at the same time, teachers are teaching in the classroom. We don't want them to worry too much about, where should I put the camera and whether my voice is clear and I have to do a lot of editing. That's why we thought of using Swivl.
Right.
Yeah. And that was, you know, originally when we looked at Swivl, the idea was, so Hamlet works with a team of people that do professional development and coaching at our school.
Right.
And one of the visions for that program at some point is to have teachers in classrooms, and when we saw the device, when Hamlet found the, Swivl, the idea that they could put it on, we could put a camera in the back of their room, and then teachers could be in a different room, observing what's going on without messing with the environment.
Right.
So, and so that's what we're still looking to go to. And I'll tell you, in this environment, because now everything is online, we do classroom walkthroughs, through Zoom all the time. So we're going through all the classrooms constantly and observing what's happening, which has been really great. But yeah, with the AP, we don't want, because we're going to have kids that are in front of the teacher and in Japan, in the US, and I didn't want them monkeying around with their devices because it's a pretty short amount of time.
So gotcha.
Yeah, and again, I would say this environment has forced us to make sure that all of our systems are high and tight, and that when you go into Schoology pages, it doesn't matter what teacher you go into. It's really,
you find a link, you find
everything. It's all the resources are there, and the idea of, well, I don't want to have all my resources on there, so the students see it ahead of time. Nobody cares about that anymore. It's more about building each classroom, each course in their library.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think one critical hurdle that people kind of get over with is like, now they're not that afraid of being recorded and get on the camera. It's like, it's just a different generation, right? For the kids, like, they do it every day, but for us, it's a different game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, one of the most frequent questions we have from new customers who are just introducing video in their schools is how to get teachers more comfortable. And we have all kinds of methodologies at this point developed where we talk to them about doing self-reflection where nobody except them sees the video, or actually have the teachers to record students first and provide feedback to students before they themselves get recorded. Share it with a peer versus a supervisor. So like, there's all these technologies, and you guys kind of have like this perfect storm where like you have to use video. There is no other choice.
Just have a pandemic and then it's solved.
Yeah, because in the beginning it couldn't be a choice. As we shared it with our faculty, is that if we didn't record, then are you ready to be up in the middle of the night with kids that have questions about what's going on? Because that's our reality, and so we can be synchronous, but we have to have a system in place for those that can't be here. So, and I'll tell you, down the road, looking at how much travel and things that we do have as a school, I could see some teachers next year, when it's a Friday and 3/4 of their class is gone, half of their class is gone, that they switch back into Zoom and they Zoom the lesson, and then the kids watching it back on the plane on the way back from their sports trips. I actually think it's going to help support some of the travel that we have a lot better.
Mm-hmm. That was actually my very next question, is like, do you plan to continue with some of those things beyond it? Sounds like absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be a shame. I mean, and Hamlet heard me talk about this this last week, that for us to do all this learning and then to just throw it away, when we get back to our regular norms, would just be a tragedy. So
that's going to be my research project, so don't worry about it. I need to make sure it's going to happen. We have an instructional coach who has been using Swivl, Scott. He's not in Hong Kong right now, but then we were actually testing that before this crisis. So I still need to learn and see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that with the order that we're just doing now too, we're gonna again, it's that next layer of, okay, here's something new that we're gonna try, and how does it work? Within our system right now, and I think our teachers are really gonna like it. And so I am excited to get them on campus and to do that next layer of thinking about, because we also have teachers that want to move around and they're walking back and forth, they're chained to their computer, and
right.
And you get that whole this thing back the whole time.
Right.
So
well, and a lot of what we found, a lot of teachers have a certain cadence You know, they're
Sure.
especially the ones that, you know, they have a certain cadence and thought process, and how they present on the whiteboards. They have a very specific way in terms of laying out the information and structuring the information. So as you said, like you want to minimize the amount of discomfort that they have in teaching, and then, you know, this can deliver, and then maybe later on they can restructure it, but at least in the short term they're not.
Great.
My final question is, what recommendations would you share with kind of schools who might be forced into this similar situation? So like, what are maybe lessons learned or things not to do, or you know, things that, like, if somebody is just starting to think about, what are the top 3 things that they should think about?
Yeah, I think that some of the things that we did well in this scenario, looking back, was that we made some very decisive, some big decisions, you know, and put parameters in place so our teachers didn't have to guess what the expectations were or how to try to navigate some things. You know, we adapted a form from Shanghai American, who you know, created in a virtual environment, what are the roles of everybody in the school? What's the role of the nurse? What's the role of a teacher? You know, and so we have all that outlined, and then had really clear expectations of as a faculty member, this is what is expected at this time, and we have a really, you know, a clear sheet with that. But also as students, this is what's expected of you, you know, during this time, and
I'm sure parents as well.
Yeah, and so we've been sharing out with those groups consistently with that, you know, and I think that having those parameters and those clear guidelines has really helped out a lot.
From tech coach point of view, my take on that will be, we need to understand the learning curve when we are jumping into this. Like, there are so many excellent tools out there, but we can't just throw it into the scene without knowing what people are good at, because they're already handling this crisis. They're already shifting from what they've been doing well, and they feel comfortable to something that they haven't been doing. So we need to make that as smooth as possible and do it incrementally, rather and make it clear to people that, okay, we are focusing on teaching and learning. It's not about using the best tool at this moment, but we are going to provide resources if you want to take it to the next level. So that part is very important as well in terms of the transition.
Yeah, and being cautious, because everybody wants to go find a new bell and whistle, and you just got to be so careful to make sure that we aren't doing 15 different platforms, you know, and so we had a sharing document where faculty were putting on things that they were using. Hamlet and our associate principal Brent, they've been going through it, and you know, if there's things on there that we don't want, we remove them, and so they're kind of vetting those things along the way, because this is definitely an environment where somebody can go, well, I just love using blogs, so I'm going to use a blog, and you're like, no, we aren't using blogs. That's not what we're doing, right? And so being very aware and telling people that it's okay to venture out and see what's out there, but you need to talk to us before you try to implement anything, because it may not be in line with what we're doing, or a tool that we already have may already do it, and you just aren't using it, all the capabilities of it.
And periodic communication, because people expect something quick and like they want an answer, but at the same time it could be like Dave said, over communicating sometimes, which is not a problem in the beginning, but then after a while, like it maybe twice a week or like every week, like for our faculty, we have weekly updates on the expectation. That makes it clear for people not to like, I don't need to change my practice tomorrow, or for parents or students to think, oh, tomorrow I'm not going to use this and use that. So like the expectation management is very important as well.
Yeah, and for the first couple of weeks, so I've always done a Sunday night letter to be read Monday morning for our faculty, always, right? But in this situation, I would do a Sunday and a Wednesday, and because it was consistently moving, or there were questions, and Hamlet knows I hate email, and so I don't email people. I just don't. I answer email, and that's about it. But
talk to people.
Yeah, I talk to people. And so, and I think that was having really clear direction and listening to, is this a, like FAQs, right? Frequently asked questions, not once. Like,
Right.
what are the frequent questions? And let's make sure that people have the answers to them. But we also have to be careful not to react to everything that you hear. You have to find out, is that all, is that some, or is it one?
Did you guys adopt any kind of real-time messaging, kind of like Slack or I don't know, Microsoft product or anything like that?
No, I've used Slack in the past, and I just couldn't get in a groove with it. So but I would say that our team, our administrative team, we meet almost daily for like an hour of touch base, and then we have a crisis management team, which is like all the upper admin. We meet every day. So all the principals, the head of school, the associate head of school, HR director, finance, director of facilities, all of us meet every morning. Yeah.
Face-to-face or online?
Face-to-face, but as you can tell by my response to that, I don't think that that's necessary always. But
okay.
But it's part of it. And for the IT and the tech coaches, which is the ETS team, we use Slack. But then we found that communicating with faculties, we use Google Hangouts because it's built in, is in their email interface. Because most people still rely on email, although like we hate it, but then it's just the norm. So people can still do instant messaging.
Yep. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Great. It's fantastic story. It's hats off to you guys. It's an interesting to be kind of thrown into the deep end right away and try to figure out how to manage it, how to drive it. So very, very, very interesting.